Now I'm very excited to welcome back a college basketball expert as well as the editor and host at the Vegas Sports and Information Network, and Mr. Matt Youmans from vsin.com. You can follow Matt on X at Matt Youmans247. Happy St. Patty's Day to you, Matt. The heat is on. How are things cooking in Vegas?
Hey, great to be back on your show. You know what? It's an awesome week in Vegas. How about this weather? It's going to be 90s, up around 100 through the weekend. It's perfect pool weather if you go outside. I know a lot of people are going to be trapped inside watching college basketball all day Thursday, all day Friday, Saturday, but I don't think this weather could be any better out here. And this is my favorite week of the year. I've said this many times. To me, the first 4 days of the NCAA tournament, especially the first two, to me, blow away the Super Bowl. These are the best 2, 3, 4 days of the year.
The anticipation is amazing. The contests are awesome. The Survivor format now is amazing. We do a Survivor here from Splash Sports at the Odds Breakers, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And I'm having such a good time doing this. And now you got these promotions with perfect bracket, this and that for $1 billion. Yeah, that's insured, and that's not going to happen. So just want to let people know that. It's just the outcomes are just too crazy, but that's how it's so fun about this week is that we have so much going on. I'm in a Calcutta. Sean Kanaki's in a Calcutta as well with me. We just make the best of it. And I agree, Matt, this is the best week. And this heat, it's going to be 107 degrees in Arizona on Friday. And I am okay with it because my pool's finally going to get up to 80, probably 88, 85. And I don't even have to heat it up this year. I'm just going to be able to jump in.
That sounds like golf weather to me. I have not had the golf clubs out since August, but when it starts to get hot like this, I'm going to start to think about playing. You know what? We've also got the Masters right around the corner. So this is a great few weeks in sports and sports betting.
Absolutely. And you were just traveling out to Thailand with a few friends of mine. How was Thailand out there? It's a place I have on my bucket list to go. I still haven't been.
Well, you need to go. But then again, you're married with kids, so it might be a little bit different. I'm going to tell you that that's the first time I've been there. And I was out there with a few friends. You know Chris Sanook from Vegas. We met Roxy Roxborough out there, Scott Pritchard. There was a bunch of guys who from Vegas who were on this trip. And the only thing I'll say is it's like Girls Gone Wild times 10. And you go to Bangkok, you go to Pattaya Beach, and the scene with the women makes Vegas look like kindergarten. It's off the charts. I can't tell you any stories. You're gonna, Chris can tell you some stories. Chris was actually a great tour guide for us, as was Scott Pritchard. Roxy gave us a bunch of advice. We actually had a cheat sheet. We knew what to do, what not to do, where to go, maximize our 10 days in Thailand. And I cannot wait to go back.
What happens in Thailand stays in Thailand. For people in Vegas, that is a big statement. I'm married with kids, but I can always watch from the stands. I enjoy that myself. So I have a good time, and it doesn't matter to me. I enjoy people watching a ton, and I am going to make it out there. So it sounds fun. And Chris, great tour guy, perfect guy to have go with you, who has so much experience out there, being at his wife's from there as well. So that's awesome. Well, let's talk a little college basketball then. Did the committee do a good job? What could have been better if not?
Actually, I think the committee did a better job than most years. Seems like there's a lot less complaining about the bracket this year. I did not think St. John's should have been seeded 5. So deserved a better seed than that. And you can talk a lot about, well, they lost some big non-conference games and the Big East was down. St. John's pounded UConn twice, and UConn's a 2 seed. And St. John's won the Big East regular season and tournament and blew out UConn in the title game by 20. I thought, a 4 seed is fair. 5, I thought a little bit much to send UConn out to San Diego as a 5 seed. So I thought that was a mistake. I think the committee needs to put more emphasis on how a team plays in its final 10 or 12 games. and not put so much weight on some wins that might happen in November and December that don't, to me, some games like that don't matter, should not matter as much when you get to March. All the results should matter, but I think you need to wait, put more weight on how teams play at the end of the season. Like Oklahoma. Sooners, I thought, deserved to be in the field. The way they play at the end of the season, there's not many teams that would want to play Oklahoma this week. How about SMU? Why is SMU in the field? We're looking at a Mustangs team that was, a 10 or 11 seed in the ACC tournament, went 1-5 in their last 6 games. 1-5 in the last 6. And but you could also say, well, if that's true, then Miami doesn't deserve to be in the tournament because SMU opened as an 8.5-point favorite against Miami. So all the people who cried said, oh, you got to put Miami in the tournament. Miami's an 8.5-point dog to the last team in the 68-team field. So I don't know. Those are a few things you could nitpick on there if you wanted to. I thought I would rather be watching Auburn Miami than SMU Miami. I don't really understand why SMU's in the field. Auburn at least has a win on the road against Florida. I know Auburn's. You could tear down Auburn's resume too and say that team finished weak. But hell, I just said SMU lost 5 of its final 6 games. I'd rather see Miami, Oklahoma in Dayton or Miami, Auburn in Dayton. I don't need to see Miami, SMU. So I thought that was a mistake by the committee.
100%. And I had 300-1 for them to win the SEC. If Arkansas and ACUF didn't beat them, they would have got Ole Miss and then Vandy. It would have been, so close. But yeah, I sniffed out Oklahoma too. It's so funny. You line them against Texas, they're a favorite. You line them against a bunch of NC State, they're a big favorite. I don't know why they took away the last 10 game metric because you're not putting the best teams in. Florida State have been riding the last couple weeks. They almost beat Duke outright. It would have been sweet if they did. Just missed the. It's like Florida State would be favored against them. So it's like they're like, we want to make the whole season matter. What do you with the transfer portal the way it is? November, December is preseason to me. That is preseason college basketball. I don't understand why they have to do that. They did not get the last 10 teams. And yeah, of course, nobody really deserves it except for the top 4, top 6, top 8, whatever. We can talk about that. And that's what makes it more stomachable. But I think they got Miami of Ohio right. I think the fact you got to put them in because you won 30 games and you got to put them in that playing game. I think they actually did that perfect. But I agree, just like you, some of the teams that were better than some of the bubble teams did not get in. So that's basically my problem. I guess the West bracket is a little confusing to me because they kind of line them up weird. They put the ex-coaches with Pitino in Kansas, obviously. I guess Duke, you can't say that as ex-coach, but kind of like those big storied programs on one side. Then you have the hot teams on the other, the Wisconsins, the Arkansas, the Purdue, the Arizona, BYU. That's a tough thing for them. I feel like the West bracket was kind of hard. And I also thought that why did you not put Houston with Duke? I don't think UConn's the worst 2 seed. It would have been a nice rematch to see Houston versus Duke again in an Elite 8 matchup. So I felt that was also a little bit of a miss. I'm also pissed that they lined up Arkansas and Wisconsin in the 32 game. I don't know why they did that. It's like they could have both done a lot of damage going far in a quadrant there.
I understand that when Nebraska was in the midst of that 20-0 start, Nebraska beat the brakes off of the Badgers, right? But if you look at the resume in total, Badgers have wins at Michigan, at Illinois, at Purdue. They beat Illinois in the Big Ten tournament in Chicago. They got some of the best wins of any team in the country, and they're a 5 seed. Wisconsin's a 5 seed in a bracket with Arizona and Arkansas. I thought that draw sucked for Wisconsin. Why does Nebraska deserve a 4 and Whiskey a 5? Nebraska just lost by 16 to Purdue in the Big Ten tournament, wasn't even competitive in that game. I would have flipped. I would have put Wisconsin on the 4 line, Nebraska on the 5, and also found a way to put, like I said, St. John's on that 4 line as well. But, that's just none of that stuff really matters now because we just need to handicap the games that are in front of us, right?
Absolutely. Well, you think the same way as I do because Wisconsin gets that 4 seed. I'm picking them in the Final Four in that side of the bracket. So let's get to our 8-pack of games. You started out with Troy, and it looks like let's go to our friends over at FanDuel. Troy is a dog of plus 13.5, minus 120 at FanDuel. It's 12.5 to 13.5, let's call it, and a total of 137.5. This is actually an early game for a Matt Youmans type guy to be betting on a Thursday, Matt. So what do you think about this one that you picked?
What time does this tip off on Thursday?
It says 9:40.
Oh, I hate that. I didn't realize that. Oh, well, got to go with it. It's one of my favorite. Before I knew the times were set, one of the first bets I made was Troy plus 14. I made that number right around 10.5, and I saw the 14, and I grabbed that when I was driving into Circa. But, I'd still play it at 13.5. Like I said, I still think that number's high. I watched Troy twice early in the season. Again, we're talking about early season, which doesn't mean a lot now, but played 2 of the wildest games I've seen all season back to back. I don't know if you watch these games or not, but the Trojans played at San Diego State. This is in November, and they won the game 108-107 in double overtime. Insane game. 2 days later, Troy went to USC and played an even wilder game. They lost in 3 overtimes, 107-106. And I watched both those games. I was like, man, this Troy team is good. So I followed them a little bit this season. 5-1 in the last 6. There's Sun Belt champs. And I've always liked their coach since he was at UT Arlington. Scott Cross is a really good coach. I already talked about Nebraska a little bit. Cornhuskers are fading fast. 6-6 in their last 12 games after that 20-0 start. I decided this is going to be a bet against team for me in the tournament before I even saw the bracket. I like Troy anyway. So give me the double-digit dog there from the Sun Belt.
I'm with you. There's absolutely no chance I can pick Nebraska in this one. Maybe to win, but not to cover. Really thinking about Troy myself. I like the under too. I like the first half under. I like the full game under because one thing that Nebraska does do well is they can guard the 3. Mm-hmm. And Troy's going to take enough threes. Yeah, I think Troy is one of those teams that takes I think it's like a 45%, 46%. I'll pull it up right now. It is 45.6% of their shots are 3-pointers. And, they kind of live and die by it a little bit. And I think they're more hot right now than Nebraska, but Nebraska does defend the 3, ranking 7th in the league, allowing 29.9 percentage points. But you know what? You put everything else together, Nebraska cannot offensive rebound at all. They rank 314th. They do not get to the free throw line at 350th. It really tells me that this is an under game and probably a dog game. So no disagreement there. I like under 137.5 for my play. Wow, I love it. I'll probably be on Troy as well. Let's go to one of the games that I played, and I'm going to go with North Dakota State versus Michigan State. Michigan State's minus 16.5. The total is 143.5. This was large enough for me to get involved. Michigan State is a solid. I think they're overrated. I don't think that they're really a top 10 team like Ken Pom says. I think they've been very fortunate this year. Fears is kind of their only guy, and when he's cold, it seems like the rest of the team shuts down. They have not been shooting threes the way they used to. They turn the ball over. They don't force turnovers. North Dakota State, nothing spectacular, but they only lost 2 games since December 29th. And I know out there in the North and the Summit and everything, it's not like that impressive. But I will say that away from home, I love looking at that metric. As you know, Matt, they only rank 247th in home road splits on Haslametrics. I think it's close enough to where it's going to be about a 12 to 14 point victory for Michigan State. I'm going to take North Dakota State to be feisty in this game for 2 stars. So that's what I'm going to do, plus 16.5.
You know what? That's on my list. I have not bet it yet. I was going to wait to see if this number might go up a little bit, if the public is going to play the favorite. But North Dakota State is definitely on my radar. Like you said, a 27-win team that went 14-2 in the Summit League, won that league by 2 games. But if you looked, I like their personnel. They shoot 36.5% from three, 8-1 in the last 9 games. The one question I have, and you probably do too, you look at North Dakota State, they've never stepped up in class against major league opponents this season, right? They've kind of always stayed in their own class and didn't step up and play any power conference opponents, so I'm not sure how they're going to measure up to Michigan State. I'm a little bit nervous about that game because it seems like the typical first-round game where you take 17 points and the whole way North Dakota State's hanging around 8, 9, 10. They're right there. And then with about 3 minutes to go, all of a sudden Michigan State's up 15 and you're starting to sweat, right? Hopefully that's not the way it happens. But I like North Dakota State here too, so I'm with you on that one.
Hofstra, Alabama minus 11.5 on FanDuel, total 159.5, pretty high total. This is one of the ones you picked. Let's hear what you have to talk about.
Well, Aiden Holloway is out, obviously, for Alabama with the big issue that was announced last night with the bust, the marijuana bust. So you're talking about a player who averages about 17 points a game, shoots 44% from three. Yeah. He's the top 3-point shooter on the team by percentage. That's not only a big personnel loss, it's a big distraction for the Crimson Tide this week. If you watch Alabama, you know how important Aiden Holloway is to that team. So I was thinking about Hofstra anyway, and I went ahead and played it after I heard that yesterday. Hofstra, an 11.5-point dog. Pride won 24 games out of the Coastal. Speedy Claxton, the coach, has done a really good job, but this is a good shooting team. You have 74% from the free throw line, 37% from three, and they got a lead guard who could score. Cruz Davis, a junior guard, 20 points per game. He shoots 40% from three. It's a Hofstra team that won at Syracuse and Pitt in December, 11-1 in the last 12 games, and they're going to slow the pace down a little bit, not let the Tide run wild here, I think, and you've got to do that if you're going to play with Alabama. You're not going to run with Alabama and shoot threes and beat them. I think Hofstra's got a chance to even win this game if things break right. So another double-digit dog here.
I got a bet that ties into that, and you'll hear it a little bit later. Now, I'm pissed at myself because I don't know if this news came out when the lines came out, because I took Alabama minus 12.5 and it jumps to 13.5. And then the news comes out, it jumps down to 11.5. And I'm looking at this dude's stats, and I'm like, this guy is probably their best player. 44% from three when you play like Alabama. You know, they're a huge rim three team as well. They do both. They shoot the three and they get offensive rebounds. And you're going to take their best guy away. There's nothing I can do about this bet right now. I'm not going to like get screwed on 12 or something like that. There's other ways I can get creative personally to get out of it. But I did send that one out myself. So it's not like I'm going to have to eat it. But I agree with you. I am very, very concerned for Alabama. And I don't even know if I want to use them in my survivors, even for the first game now, just to get rid of them, you know? So I have a lot of thinking to do on what happened here. Still, man. It's one of those. Yeah, sometimes they work out your way and sometimes they don't. But
usually it works out. Usually it works against you. I would say that I can't count how many times this season I made a bet and then found out the star player in that team was scratched, or a starter was scratched. You find out about an hour or 2 hours before the game. So I know how you feel.
Thank you. It's tough. And the books, for some reason, I saw them to win it all at plus 180 to 1, but the spread didn't move much. And I was like, why is it 180 to 1 to make the Final Four? And now we know. So, yeah, that pissed me off. Texas A&M versus St. Mary's. St. Mary's minus 3 total, 147.5. I mean, I love the Aggies with Bucky McMillan, but, you know, this is they play the press defense. They have a huge rim and three rate themselves. They're exciting to watch. They're a very high volatile team. But the problem I have with Bucky is that he doesn't have the horses to play that great of a tournament type against pretty good teams. St. Mary's has played solid basketball against a better team named Gonzaga, who also runs the floor like them, except the Zags play way better defense than Texas A&M. From a matchup perspective, neither team has a lot of offensive advantages. I kind of like the under a little bit, but St. Mary's is going to have a big rebounding advantage. St. Mary's ranks 4th in rebounding percentage. The Aggies rank 185th. When you're going on a neutral court, that is not good for the Aggies. It's just straight rebounding. Since February 1st, the Aggies ranked 61st on Bart Torvik. And this is kind of one of those things that I was like, you could make an argument that they should be out. St. Mary's ranks 18th on Bart Torvik since February 1st. I like the Gales. I took the Gales on the money line, though, at minus 140. Now that thing's at like minus 170. I would lay the 3 if forced to, but I'm happy with my minus 140. But for this podcast, I'm going to say St. Mary's minus 3.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I like St. Mary's. I have not I've not bet any favorites yet. I've got a few favorites I do like, but that was one that was on my list. Yeah, I probably money line that if anything. But it's an interesting game because it's a contrast of styles and how Randy Bennett wants to play at St. Mary's. A buckyball is up and down. I think St. Mary's is going to win that. Usually the team that plays a slow tempo is going to dictate the pace, and that's going to play into St. Mary's favor. You know, you were talking about I think you mentioned Bart Torvik or you mentioned Kim Palm. I thought this was interesting. These are teams that are rated higher in the last month than their opponent in the first round games. And this is how they played in the past month. And this is on Bart Torvik. This is something you could look at. Utah State has played like 20 spots better on the metrics than Villanova. Santa Clara has played a little bit better than Kentucky. VCU's played 10 spots better than North Carolina. USF, a little bit better than Louisville. Iowa, 8 spots better than Clemson. And how about this one? Georgia, 31 on Torvik over the last month. St. Louis, 150. And Georgia's one of the favorites. You're talking about playing St. Mary's. Georgia's another favorite I've got on my list that I sort of like here in the first round.
That's great. I mean, I love that you brought that up because I always at tournament time, and I start before conference tournaments, I take Bart Torvik from February 1st on. And that is an amazing way to do it. And I'll tell you right now, St. Louis, that's going to be such a public play with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar there, finally making it in the tournament. I think you can just wait that out more and more and more. There's 2 that you can wait out. Miami's one because they're away in Missouri, St. Louis, and Missouri's close to there, 100 miles. And then that one, I think you wait out because I think, and maybe North Carolina, I kind of like VCU, but I think those you wait out. And I think a lot of opportunities you wait out. You fire on the ones that you really like now, and then you have a list of ones that you're waiting for movement. And if it moves away from you, oh, well, you know, you don't have to bet it. You know, it's better to leave a loser off the table than gain a winner when you're laying juice. So that's just a little advice. But I 100%, you know, it's so funny. I even wrote down St. Louis like a sucker just as a possible. Then the more I looked into it, it looked like a bunch of crap. So I'm really glad that you brought that up, man. Great call. Absolutely great call. What do we have next here? I think we have a Northern Iowa game here, and Northern Iowa is about plus 11-ish to St. John's. It's plus 10.5 at FanDuel right now. We'll call plus 11 at a couple books. The total is pretty low at 131.5. How about Northern Iowa coming through in the Missouri Valley Conference, just sneaking in? St. John's with a massive win at the end against UConn with a double like revenge situation. So what do you have for us on this big game?
All right. So again, I mentioned Troy plus 14, one of the first bets I made. The other bet I made at about the same time was Northern Iowa plus 11.5. But, you know, you can still grab 11 or 10.5. I think this is going to be a tight game. And this is coming from someone who's got St. John's in his Final Four. And I'm higher than most on the Johnnies. You and I talked about that on your podcast a couple of months ago, right? When I said, you got the St. John's future around 90-1 or 75-1, right?
I got it with you, my friend. Yeah. I'll pull it up right now. We have St. John's 22-1 for the Final Four is what I got, and 90-1 for national champ.
That's what I got too. And I like this Rick Pitino team quite a bit. And if you can beat Danny Hurley's butt twice, you're accomplishing something. And I think this is what I say about when you go on the road to neutral courts, unfamiliar atmospheres and opponents, defense, rebounding, and toughness always travel. Those things are always going to come with you. You don't know if the three-point shooting will or not. Three-point shooting comes and goes. St. John's doesn't shoot the three at a great percentage. Obviously, we know that's a weakness. I also think this situation is a negative one for the Johnnies because that game was so emotional when you're talking about that Big East tournament title. That was their Super Bowl, essentially. They wanted to beat UConn so badly. They won the Big East regular season, wanted to win the tournament at the Garden, take 2 out of 3 from UConn, and get revenge for the 72-40 beatdown that they got in Hartford, I think it was, a few weeks prior. That was a huge game for St. John's. Just celebrating. Now they got to go to San Diego to play Northern Iowa. This is a tough situation for St. John's. You're playing a Panthers team here. You mentioned the Missouri Valley champs, who they're tough. They played a slow pace, and they're going to make this difficult on St. John's. Look, when you're looking for a double-digit dog in the tournament, a couple things jump out that you want. Defense and slow pace helps because if it's a slower pace game, it's going to be a grinder. You reduce possessions, and that shortens the game, and that helps a double-digit dog. Well, Northern Iowa at Ken Palm ranks 24th in defensive efficiency and 363 out of 365 teams in tempo. This is going to be a grinder. I think St. John's is going to have to sweat it out, but I'd be happy if the Johnnies won by 5, 7. I don't care. Just survive and advance because I'm pretty confident they can beat Kansas in the next round. But Northern Iowa is a very difficult draw here, so I had to take the points with the Panthers.
It is. And, I'm looking at is the first half plus 5.5 minus 104 for Northern
Probably
Iowa. Yeah, I say you could split your bet in half and do both or just do a third and 2/3, whatever you want. I agree. I like fading the conference champions the first game. Not saying that they're necessarily going to lose, but a money line sprinkle is always fun too. Even first half money line plus 270. So that's the way I like to do things as well. And just like Matt, I'm a little bit more of a dog better in general, unless you see some serious weakness out there. Let's move on to the next one. Purdue versus Queen. No, that's for Friday. I have Idaho versus Houston.
Okay.
Houston's 23.5. The total is 136.5. Now, I have to say I got this at a better number. But Houston is two things. For one, they're boring as hell to watch. For two, they're a bully. They are a massive bully. And that's what they've been for the last 6 to 10 years. They smoke the small kids. They beat them, the children of the poor, and they beat them by almost double the points. And they've done that quite a few times this year. They beat UCF by 24, Colorado by 40, Kansas by 22, even Cincinnati by 22. Even bigger names than Idaho. They're beating both ASU and West Virginia. They won by over 50. There's a couple of smaller teams I'd even mention. But when they step up in a top 20 team, top 15 team, they actually get beat because this offense isn't great. But their offense can score against these bad, small teams that don't have good ball movement, that just rely on basic pick and roll stuff. And that's Idaho right there. I laid the points with Houston, and I'll give it away too at 23.5 because I think Houston is going to pound this team until they finally get to a situation where they're going to struggle. And maybe it's against St. Mary's. But I will say that Houston is going to be very motivated to get to Houston in the second round in the regionals. I thought they were gifted that. I don't know if they deserved that, Matt, to be in the South bracket either. So, like I said, head scratcher, but I'll take Houston the first game.
I don't disagree. That's one I was looking at, and I said that's a likely beatdown delivered by Houston where I don't think Idaho can hang with that team. So I think you're probably on the right side there. Do I have a favorite? Is my fourth play a favorite?
I'll check. Just real quick, Idaho team totals under is probably also
okay.
A decent.
That's probably a good idea too. Yeah.
In that situation. Let's move on to your last one. I believe it's a Utah State.
There we go.
Utah's, they're dancing right now between 1.5 and 2. Depends upon which book you're looking at. We'll call it 1.5, Utah State, and they're playing a Villanova team that actually got rid of their bad coach, and they have a pretty decent coach right now in Kevin Willard. But, obviously Villanova gets into the tournament, and Villanova is playing the only Mountain West team in the tournament, which I find interesting because there's a lot of Mountain West teams in the top 100. And if you looked as a conference, if you add up the strength, it was actually stronger than last year when they got 4 teams in. Sean Kanaki gave me that info. But I will say that it's weird to see one team in the Mountain West because we used to love fading the Mountain West under 3.5 wins. And, and that was great until that San Diego State went to the finals a couple years, 3 years ago, whatever it was. But now you got Utah State as a favorite in a different role, and Utah State is playing a lot closer than Villanova. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, first of all, I don't think the Mountain West deserved 4 teams last year. And I don't really have a problem with one Mountain West team making it in. Maybe you could make an argument for 2, but I watched the Mountain West more than anybody, and the league was definitely down this year. It was down. There's no doubt about it. So I am playing Utah State here. And by the way, Kiev, this is a Utah State team that got beat by UNLV twice during the regular season. UNLV, okay, and this is a mediocre UNLV team that's beat Utah State twice. But I am going to play Utah State here. I think this game being in San Diego helps the Aggies. They played in that arena, short travel. Villanova, again, coming from the East Coast. And Villanova off a 14-point loss to Georgetown in the Big East tournament. So this current form for the Cats is not very good. Utah State's got a couple what I like here. They got veteran guards. MJ Collins, Mason Falslev. I thought last week they really showed what they were made of when they beat UNLV and got payback in that 20-point win in the Mountain West tournament. So I like the way the Aggies played in the conference tournament in Vegas last week against a team that shoots 36% from 3. And I think Utah State finds a way to win the game. So I know people give me crap sometimes for giving out all underdogs. I had to give you one favorite today. So 3 dogs and 1 short favorite, Utah State -1.5.
That must have been really hard laying that -1.5 there, Matt. It's really had to stretch out for that one, my friend. Utah State was this third game I played, third bet I made. I bet a -1.5 as well. Talked about it even on Monday because I bet it on Sunday. Villanova's got some injuries and really serious injury to Matt Hodge, who tore his ACL, and he's 6'8", and he's a power forward there. And he is one of the best players easily. He even shoots 37% from 3. And Villanova is really, really going to be hurting without this dude. And he's one of the better rebounders on the team. Their depth is really bad right now. And now you got to go all the way to the West Coast. And Utah State is pretty familiar with playing in San Diego, as we all know. And you got Villanova traveling 3 time zones. That is a recipe for destruction. I think the number's low just based on that. I think got to give Kevin Willard props just to get in the tournament for his very first year, turning this program around from a guy like that. But I like Utah State, and we'll go Mountain West over 0.5 tournament wins too. Okay, you ain't gonna find that, but that's the funny thing to say. I think I have one more before we just do a couple randoms. Idaho versus Penn versus Illinois. Penn versus Illinois. I didn't cover Penn versus Illinois yet. Illinois is -24.5, total 150.5. This is going to be in South Carolina. You got a school of smart kids, and I guess Yale wasn't too smart when they didn't foul up 3 with a few seconds left. But either way,
wow.
Of course, it's going to be Fran McCaffrey back against Illinois this year, right? Of course, you're going to see that old matchup. And you know the way I go with that one. Fran knows Illinois. He knows that Brad Underwood. But when they faced off, it was fireworks. It was overs. It was lots and lots of points. And I think that's what you're going to see again. And this is the only over that I bet so far. And it might be the only over that I'm playing that's not live. But Penn plays a fast pace, 69th in average possession length. They shoot the 3 ball, 11th in 3-point percentage. Illinois, they only rank 277th in pace. But if you look at the true numbers with Illinois, it's because they blew out a lot of teams and they slow it down at the end. They still play pretty fast in the first half. They're very efficient, third in offensive rebounding. So they're always cleaning up their boards. Illinois is going to get their points, but I think Penn keeps up with them to put this over 150.5. I got a little bit better of a number, but when I see Penn scoring minimum 65 and Illinois should get 85 to 90 easily, I like the over 150.5 for that.
If there's another game you want to play over for those who like to bet overs, that Georgia St. Louis game should be breakneck pace. That should be like 90 to 85 or 95-90. That should be a shootout too.
Yeah, that's one thing I like to say is like when the number's huge, it doesn't mean you should necessarily be scared away, and it still could be very, very wrong. I've done that with Bama multiple times, and Georgia's one of the other ones that won't stop running. They just will not stop running. And all it takes is a ref just to call the game, call whistles, because he's just seeing a bunch of bodies filling in the air going towards the rim, and they get stuck calling fouls all the time, and that's going to happen. And so I looked at that too, and it's not off my radar. That's going to be probably one of those cute ones that I don't do a first half under on. But I definitely like this over. So, and I think it's going to go up. So if you like it, get it right now. Let's talk a little hodgepodge. It's funny. Before you came on, I was thinking about bringing up the St. Louis thing, and you kind of answered it already. So that's a really cool thing that we covered that already. Iowa versus Clemson. This is a game that I don't want anything to do with, but I just remember you made the point that Iowa is playing a lot better ball. And if there's another favorite that someone might look at, -2, -2.5-ish, I want -2. I don't want -2.5 with the following with 3 points. But I think that I could now that you brought that up, I'm gonna look a little deeper on this one.
Yeah, I would even look at playing that on money line, shop around for the cheapest money line price. I picked Iowa in my bracket to advance, but when you look at that game, you could easily see that being like a 1 or 2 point game. It's going to come down to the last minute, the last possession, right?
Absolutely. It could do that. I see, and this is another pairing I didn't like, Matt, because I wanted to fade both of these teams. I wanted to be on Wisconsin and Arkansas as a dog, and I wanted to fade these two teams. So unfortunately, they screwed me on this one. Here's another one that I'm pissed about: Louisville against South Florida. These are two teams I wanted to be on. I didn't think anybody was talking about Louisville, and Louisville should be getting their guy back, Mikal Brown. I think they will. It's not confirmed yet, but another situation where I wanted to be on both teams, and now you got 5.5. I think with Mikal Brown, it should be 8. I think without Mikal Brown, it should be maybe 5. So it's really close to 5 right now. But I could see as soon as the news comes out, I might have to bet Louisville, and it sucks because I like South Florida too.
Yeah, I don't know if Brown's going to be back or not. I have not read that. I've read that he's likely out. So I don't know if we got good information on that or not. But that's why one reason I haven't played that game yet. I'm not sure. I actually had South Florida written down as a possible play. If you actually look at the Bulls, and they lost at Alabama in the middle of December. Since then, they're 19-3. 2 of the losses in overtime and another loss by 1 point. 11-game win streak. Bulls are strong inside and out. They got 5 double-figure scores. And I saw one of their players talking about how they're their 11 seed, but it's not going to be an upset when they win. So there you go. I think South Florida's live there, catching 5.5. Actually, there's 6 out there, but I don't know if Brown's going to play for the Cardinals or not.
Yeah, I don't know either, and they're not going to keep that tight lip till half hour before tops. So it's going to be tough for us. Can't really do that as a play that you're going to put your name on. You just got to do that personally. Here, what about this is talked about a lot. This McNeese versus Vandy. I'm struggling with this one, man. I look at the first half. I'm like, do I grab a 6? It's 11.5 for Vandy, or can McNeese keep it close? What's Vandy's mindset after smoking Florida and then losing the way they did to Arkansas? This one's a little bit of a head scratcher to me. In the total, I tried to get under and I couldn't. Anything on this?
No, I got nothing here. I did play Vandy against Florida in that SEC tournament game, but I didn't. I'm not doing anything with this game. You remember a year ago about this time, a lot of people were touting High Point and McNeese. They're getting a lot of hype. You talked about the hot dogs. A lot of people are trying to find the underdogs who are going to win in the first round. That's become a trendy thing now in the past 10 years or so. Public will bet dogs in the first round, but then switches to chalk the rest of the way through the bracket. But last year at this time, High Point and McNeese were getting talked about by everybody. Then Purdue beat down High Point in the first round. McNeese did upset Clemson, and then Purdue beat down McNeese in the second round.
Purdue had an easy run, man, in the first two games.
I mean, but everybody was picking against Purdue, right? And then they won the games, and then they said, oh, well, they had an easy bracket, even though everybody was picking High Point and everybody was picking McNeese, and Purdue beat them both. They said, oh, well, they had an easy bracket. Well, you can't have it both ways. You can't pick them to be upset and then say, well, they had an easy opponent. But that's the way it goes. I would say that that's probably going to be a pass for me, talking about that McNeese Vandy game. It's tough. If anything, a lot of times you want to fade the teams that had to play 3 games in 3 days or 4 games in 4 days in the major conference tournaments and had to play on Sunday, right? It's easier if you play on Friday. I think Purdue's playing on Friday in St. Louis, so that's not bad. But think about St. John's, winning. We just talked about that, winning the Big East tournament. Now you got to fly cross country, and you got to play in San Diego. So a lot of times I do look to play against teams like Vandy or St. John's or whoever who had to play 3 games in 3 days and got to the championship game or won the major conference tournament. And you can also bet against those teams in the first half. Sometimes they get off to a slow start. That's an angle I've looked at in the past as well.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, that leads right into Arkansas, who had to play a lot of games. I mean, what do you think about Hawaii? You seem to know a lot about the Rainbow Warriors when it comes to college sports, Matt. So what'd you look at when you saw a 15.5 number popping for a Hawaii
team? Right. I think that number's about right. I went out to the Big West tournament here in Nevada, in Henderson, Nevada, over the weekend. And for those who don't know, Henderson's right next to Las Vegas.
You might as well call it Las Vegas, really.
Suburb. It's basically Vegas, but it says the tournament's in Henderson anyway. I went out there, and Hawaii didn't play all that well Friday night, won by double digits, but played a lot better Saturday night. They got a 7-footer, Isaac Big Fish Johnson, who can step out and hit threes, defends the rim, can run the floor. He's got a great mustache. And then you got a dynamic guard in Dre Bullock who can defend. He's an explosive athlete. He can shoot the ball. So they got some big time players. Hawaii's got size too. If you look at their starting lineup, they go 7 foot, like 6'9", 6'8", 6'6", 6'3". They got some size, so they're not going to be overwhelmed by Arkansas. Obviously, Arkansas's got better athletes. Nobody's playing better than Darius Acuff right now when you're talking about point guards. What do you have? 30 points and 11 assists against Vandy, and he
won the SEC tournament by himself.
Yeah, he's playing out of his mind. But if you want to talk about situational handicapping in this, Arkansas off the SEC tournament win and everything that goes into that, guys are celebrating for a couple days. You got a bit of a hangover from that, emotional letdown, whatever you want to call it. Well, you could say, well, yeah, the same thing's true with Hawaii. But Hawaii's team stayed here in Vegas for a couple days before they went to Portland. They did not go back. There was an errant report on Twitter that Hawaii had to fly 2,500 miles to Portland. No, they stayed in Vegas. They just flew up to Portland, I think, yesterday. And so the travel is actually not going to be a problem for Hawaii. I think it's more of an issue for Arkansas and the emotional hangover. So I would look at Hawaii first half, and maybe I haven't played it yet, but I'm thinking about Hawaii first half, maybe a little on Hawaii the game, catching 15.5.
I was looking at first half and the game, and for what you said, I think that you will get some fans from Hawaii going down to Portland. It's a one-way flight, most likely, right? I would think so. I don't know if Portland's international or otherwise. It's pretty close.
Yeah.
I agree that there's, Arkansas. Who's traveling for Arkansas in this first round? I don't think anyone's traveling for Arkansas. I mean, it's tough for them too because they have to face Wisconsin in the second round. It's not like I think you wait till the next round in the regionals if you're an Arkansas fan. But if you're a Hawaii fan, you travel right away because getting to the Sweet 16 is a lot more important for them than it is for them. Yeah, I actually wrote that down too. But I'm glad you mentioned Purdue because I think it's a little different here with Purdue because Purdue wins the Big Ten tournament pretty often. Does it affect them the same way from a letdown standpoint? Now, I'm going to also say, Matt, I was kind of on your side when I heard you say I'm more of a Purdue fader because I have been as in general. But I think that Michigan completely did not care because they won it last year. They won the Big Ten tournament last year, right, against Wisconsin. So I feel like Michigan just mailed it in because they know how important this year. You know, it's the team, the one seed that nobody's picking is Michigan.
I didn't know that. I picked Michigan to win the whole thing.
Did you? Oh, you maybe, I guess, but I'm hearing Duke. I'm hearing Arizona mostly. I'm hearing a few Floridas, but I'm not hearing. I think everyone's saying Michigan turns the ball over, and I think it's great for you to pick that because I think that you have a massive advantage if you're picking Michigan. And it's making me think twice a little bit because in my bracket, I do have Arizona, but no, I don't. I think that's great for you. I'd rather be on the team nobody's picking that I feel like I have an angle in. And I'm just hearing talking myself into Michigan, but more about Purdue. I'm talking. Do they cover this massive spread? I don't think they do personally.
Yeah, it's interesting. I recorded that Purdue-Michigan game. I've watched it a few times. I do believe Michigan cared about that game. I read the comments from Dusty May and the players, and I watched the interviews and watched the way Michigan played the game. I think they cared. It didn't mean as much to Michigan as it did to Purdue, right? It was for Purdue, that was redemption for a poor regular season in the Big Ten. It definitely meant more to Purdue. Those guys flipped a switch. Going to Chicago, you didn't know how the Boilermakers were going to play. Because the way they ended the regular season, their defense stunk. They weren't playing hard. They weren't emotional. They showed up in Chicago, and they looked like a totally different team. And so it's obviously, like Dusty May said, he looked at when he watched Purdue in Chicago, he said, it looks like those seniors and those players found something deep inside. And they found the motivation, and they showed up and played with a mission. And that's what happened. So it was definitely a different Purdue team in Chicago. I heard Rob Doster say that, too, on the field of 68. He goes, look, man, I was at Mackey Arena a few weeks ago, and Michigan blew out Purdue. He goes, that was not the same Purdue team I watched in Chicago. That was a totally different team. And I agreed with him. Well, it was a different team, but that's seniors who know this is their last shot, and they got a chance to get to the Final Four, and they wanted to win the Big Ten tournament to make up for the poor regular season. So I thought it definitely meant more to Purdue. But there is a bit of a concern with Michigan because L.J. Kaysen, their backup point guard, is out, and that hurts their depth on the backcourt, and he meant a lot to that team. He's been out, and if you notice, Kib, Wolverines are 0-5 ATS going into this tournament. They've failed to cover 5 in a row. They didn't play all that well in their last 2 regular season games. Barely got by Ohio State and Whiskey in the Big Ten tournament, and then lost to Purdue. They failed to cover 5 in a row. That said, when you look at Michigan, I still like Dusty May a lot. That big front line is going to be hard for anyone to deal with. You're talking about Ade Mara and Morez Johnson, Yaxel Lindeborg. Those guys are about as good as it gets on the front line. The guards concern me a little bit, especially with Kaysen out. But this is a number 1 team in defensive efficiency and a top 10 offense. So I like Michigan. I think the loss to Purdue is actually going to be a positive. I think they learned a few things, and that they could actually bounce back from that. As far as Purdue goes, Michigan's number 1 in defensive efficiency, and Purdue had 21 assists and only 2 turnovers in that Big Ten title game. That was really, really impressive. Can they sustain that this week? I think there's a bit of a letdown here against Queens out of North Carolina. I looked at Queens, and, man, this is a bad defensive team that's been blown out by almost every opponent when it stepped up in class. In fact, I got the number here on Queens. It's played Villanova, Virginia, Wake, Auburn, Arkansas. Lost all 5 by 20 points or more, and most of those were more lopsided blowouts. That said, this Queens team's really poor defensively, so Purdue's going to be able to get almost anything at once on offense. But the Queens team shoots 36% from 3, 74% from the free throw line. They got 6 double-figure scorers. And I think they can hang in this game, let's say around 20. I think it's a 90-70 type of game maybe, or 95-75.
Mm-hmm.
But I would only take the points here. I would only take the dog because if you're Matt Painter after playing 4 days and 4 days in a row in Chicago, are you going to want to play your starters a lot of minutes in this game? Hell no.
No.
You're going to want to get those guys rest in the second half and get ready for the second round. So if nothing else, you should be able to get in the back door with the underdog there, right?
That's what I'm thinking, and I'm going to discuss more of that tomorrow's show. But I guess when I saw Michigan turn the ball over 3 times in the first few minutes of the game, it just kind of made me feel like they weren't committed. But they only had 7 total turnovers in that game, so maybe you're right, and they were trying to win that game. They just played not Michigan basketball by the final score, but I think you're right. It did mean a lot more to Purdue. And I guess this is the perfect timing to go to my next question here, which is do you like any round or conference props? As I mentioned before, we used to like to fade the Mountain West with under their total wins, but you can bet a team to go to a certain round, like the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8, Final 4, blah, blah, blah. I have one if you don't.
No, I actually looked for those numbers on DraftKings last night, and I couldn't find them. And, that's one bet we've made a lot in the past because we have strong opinions about the Mountain West or the Pac-12. Usually would be like wanting to play under their win total in the tournaments. But, no, I don't have a bet on that yet. I haven't analyzed that prop yet. I've been working on a bunch of other stuff. I'm interested to hear what you've got, though. What do you have?
All right. Well, he's kind of piggybacking on your Alabama problems. I'm taking Akron to go to the Sweet 16 at 20-1. They got to get past the first game. But Texas Tech is a team, and this is one of the first bets I made was Akron plus 8.5. Texas Tech missing JT Top, and they're a big 3-point shooting team, but they're going away from home too. Akron, they're not great, and the MAC wasn't great. And yes, they don't have any big wins. You can kind of they're better than Miami, Ohio, but I think this is a really vulnerable Texas Tech team. And if Furman beats Alabama and you got 20-1, you're in a really good shape here if you can just get past that first round, and with Bama's problems, you just do not know what you're going to have. And even if Bama wins, you're still going to have a chance being that Bama's without their best player, second best player, whatever you want to say about Holloway. So I like Akron as a number is at 20-1. To make the Sweet 16. And guess what? People with all you money line rollover people, if Alabama doesn't win, it's going to be more like 3-1 and not 20-1 for Akron to get into the Sweet 16.
Hey, you know what? I got something for you on the money line rollover. All right. So I hear people talk about this all the time that, oh, you're lazy if you don't do the money line rollover. All the pros do it. That's all bullshit. Okay. First of all, most of the guys who talk about the money line rollover don't even do it.
No.
They just like to talk about it because they want to sound smart. Like, this is where you gain the edge on the math. And it's not always the case because you can have upsets and you can project what you think the money line is going to be. I'll give you an example. Last week, I bet Akron minus 115 to win the MAC tournament before the tournament. If you did the money line rollover, you're not getting minus 115. You're laying a lot more than that. After Miami got beat, Akron's price to win the MAC went up to minus 250, right?
Correct.
So if you did the money line rollover there, you got screwed. You were better off betting it before the tournament minus 115. So it doesn't always work, and I get tired of hearing people talk about that nonsense every year. Yes, if you do it, sometimes you can gain an advantage. There's no question about it. But look, we all got other things going on in life. And sometimes you're paying a convenience fee just to make the one bet instead of rolling it over when you got a bunch of other stuff you're betting and a bunch of other stuff you're doing every day, and you might forget to roll it over before the game starts or something. It could happen. Not everybody's got 24/7 they can commit to sports betting or things like that. And that's why I just wanted to mention that about the money line rollover. It's not a foolproof theory. There are situations where you should not do it.
Even with the alarm on in my phone at 9 a.m., I see the number. I'm like, that's going to get a little bit better. And I forgot to bet the money line road. It's more of a mind thing than you think. And it's the time. It takes up your time. I agree. And for just like the Ohio State winning it a couple years ago, after they lost to Michigan, the future was much better than their money line rollover was. So absolutely. There are situations where just betting it is a lot easier. And so thank you for mentioning that. So you mentioned that you got Michigan cutting down the nets. Who is in your Final Four?
St. John's out of the East. I've got St. John's over UConn in the East final. I've got Johnny's obviously getting by Duke and UConn taking out Michigan State. I wanted to pick Duke to get beat. You got to do something different in your brackets. Plus, I've seen some stuff in Duke that I don't really like recently. They lost their point guard, Caleb Foster. They got Cameron Boozer bringing the ball up the floor to initiate the offense a lot of times. I don't think Boozer's been playing all that great. And St. John's could get physical with him and rough him up. And if that's the matchup, I think the Johnny's got a pretty good shot there. And if not the Johnny's, it could be UConn. But I got St. John's out of the East. In the South, I've got Houston getting revenge against Florida in the South final. And I've got Florida 25-1 futures bet, so not actually rooting for that, but I've got Houston out of the South. Arizona over Purdue in the West final. Love this Arizona team. I love this Michigan team. So I got Michigan over Iowa State, which is going to be a hell of a game because this Iowa State team's hot. If anybody had Iowa State coming out of that bracket, I wouldn't blame you. But I've got Arizona, Michigan on the right side, St. John's, Houston on the left side. I've got Michigan over Houston in the title game. How about you?
I have.
You got Arizona?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. I
have Arizona, but I'm filling out multiple brackets, but there's always one that I have to put my name on, and that's going to be this one with Arizona. I'm struggling between UConn and St. John's. I think that St. John's is a matchup nightmare for Duke's front court because I think St. John's does have the front court to kind of play with them, and that's where I think the upset can happen against Duke. Now I'm just like, do I put in the 5 seed or the 2 seed is what I'm still trying to figure out. I might end up on I might stick with the Johnnies here. Dan Hurley's great, but he's a head case. I got Florida in the bottom, beating Houston, even though it's going to be in Houston. So I got that tough one to get through. And I think Florida is going to be spent by then. But, they might get to the final game. And I have Arizona beating Iowa State. And so, and like you said, I'm going to have one with Michigan going later to the final game against Duke. But I'm going to have Florida against Arizona here. And, you're looking back at about 12 years, all the way up till UConn won as a 7 seed. That's just, right after that, when Wisconsin was a 1 seed against 1 seed Duke, mostly 1 seeds have won this thing. And it's like 80% or something. And then I think the other time was a 4 seed UConn, who was the top efficiency team at the end of the day. And then there was a number 2 seed also. So it was Nova as a 2 seed. Nova's won as a 1 seed and a 2 seed. So I think 1 seeds win it, and I'm just being safe right now. But I think 1 seeds are 1 seeds for a reason. And if you're going to make your money in the tournament bracket, you're going to have to pick the mid-round upsets. In my opinion, I don't see any Cinderellas minus like an Akron getting to the Sweet 16.
Yep, you mentioned it. By the way, are we doing the beer bang long shots?
Let's do it. Let's do the beer bet bangers. I got an interesting one for you. I'm curious about it, and it's probably a loser, but let's see what you got first.
Well, you mentioned the Akron Texas Tech game. That's why I started to think that we hadn't done those yet. I don't really have a true long shot, but I think this could be a mini bracket of mayhem here, with the situation of Alabama being a big negative. And Akron's a hot dog this week. Everybody seems to like Akron, but hey, let's take a shot here. I think Akron's probably the hottest dog I've heard all week, which doesn't make me feel good about that. But you could bet Akron. I saw this at DraftKings. You might want to shop around. You probably get a better number. Akron to make the Sweet 16, I think, is 20-1, and Hofstra to make the Sweet 16 is 25-1.
Ooh.
I would not be stunned if we saw Akron to Hofstra in the second round. So maybe a half unit on each of those, and that might be where you get your Cinderella to make the Sweet 16. Could be Hofstra, could be Akron, but that's my thought there is split. Put a half unit on each, and maybe one of those teams gets through that bracket. I'm with you. When I filled out this bracket, I said, you can pick an occasional upset in the first round, but none of these teams are going to go too far. It's mostly going to be, once you get past the first round, it's mostly going to be chalk, chalk, chalk the rest of the way, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think so too. I'm not I'm not high on any George Basins or anything surprising. It's just the transfer portal has really killed those teams in general, and they're going to be fun. I'll be rooting for the underdogs, but I'm also going to be rooting for first half unders and unders mostly for these tournament games. And I think hopefully that's where I'm going to make some money. Overtime is going to happen, so just be prepared for that. There's going to be calls you don't like, so mentally prepare for that. But I like the Hofstra angle too, because Hofstra's only like 20 numbers off from where Akron is rated and like Ken Pom and other efficiency sites. Hofstra only one loss since January 29th, one loss to UNC Wilmington. And I actually have Wilmington going against Yale tonight. So afternoon for us, but I think Yale's really, really frustrated, and they're going to be interesting to cover 5.5. But back to your call, I think if I am playing Hofstra, I'm going to bet the other side and probably for half. So, I'm kind of splitting my unit in half that way. I'm going to get like plus 120 or something like that. So I think that's another way you can do it too, by hedging in that situation. Matt, awesome breakdown. Love your analysis here. I already wrote down some of your bets. I'll be joining you on a few. Where could our listeners and viewers get your great information?
Oh, as always, VSIN, the Sports Betting Network, VSIN.com, the VSIN Watch app, and where you can watch we're 24/7 Sports Betting Network, TV, radio. You can watch us on YouTube TV or Sirius XM radio. So great being on with you again. Good luck. Hopefully we're cashing some tickets this week.
I'll be texting you, Matt. Let's cash some tickets.